What's up guys, I'm TheOneIntegral and welcome back to another episode of Pokémon Origins. Today we will be covering a line from the Hoenn region, Lileep and Cradily, two of the fossil Pokémon in general, but obviously one of the two lines from the Hoenn region. So, as always guys, feel free to suggest some, what you want to see in the future down below in the comment section, and if I see a Pokemon I'm particularly interested in as well, I might pick it. We're on to Sinnoh next, we're doing some Sinnoh Pokemon, so suggest some of those if you'd please. But for now, let's take a look at Lileep and Cradily. So, Lileep is number 345 in the National Pokédex, coming after Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, etc. And its Japanese name is spelled Lilila, so Lili-la, just like that, but because of how Japanese pronounce L's, it's actually something like Rira. That's basically, I can't speak Japanese, but Rira, something like that. It's the Sea Lily Pokemon, and it is a rock grass type. So the first fossil Pokemon to not be rock water. Hallelujah. Well, along with Anorith and Armaldo. And Lileep stands at 1 meter or 3 foot 3 inches tall and weighs 23.8 kilograms or 52.5 pounds. Looking at its models from Generation 6, you can see in its shiny form, Lileep it gets a green body, green body and orange petals. Apart from that, not much else changes to do with that aspect. In terms of evolution, Lileep, like most fossil Pokemon, is a fairly late evolver and evolve into Cradily starting at level 40. So, Lileep is a small plant-like Pokemon, as you can see. I say plant-like, it's not really plant-like as in most grass types, but it can look like a plant. If you sort of blur your eyes a bit and squint, it looks like a flower in some aspects. If those petals or those tentacles, as they actually are, were bigger, you could very much imagine this as a flower if you didn't know that it was a Pokemon, I guess. But yeah, it's plant-like in sort of stature, I guess. It has a purple base. Obviously, flowers don't have bases, but if you just had the single stem which went down, it would look a lot more like a plant. But it has a purple base, and with like 4 little, I guess we can call them legs, but they're not legs. They're like stabilizers basically to stop Lileep falling over. They might have some sort of leg, Lileep might be able to use them to move around possibly, or to clamp down on something, but as far as we can tell, they're just like, attachments to the base to keep Lileep upright. We don't know though. As I mentioned, it has a stem connecting its head and its base, and this is actually yellow with a couple of it seems to be segmented, very much like, I don't know, anything that segmented would be, who knew, who would have guessed. It also has these yellow markings on its head as well, I guess we can call it its head. It has 2 circular or double circular rings on its head, which seem to be sort of like eyes, possibly to scare away any possible predators. Who knows? In the dark oceans, maybe if you just saw these 2 yellow eyes out of nowhere, it might be a bit scary as well. But Lileep's actual eyes are not there. From its head, there's actually sort of an opening on the top of its head, and then you have these 8 pink tentacles coming out of the head. I say pink, they are pink, but they have sort of darker pink tips to them almost. So we can assume inside the head, this is where these tentacles can be retracted possibly into, who knows, but the tentacles go back into the head, and we can assume maybe they can be extended and the rest of the tentacles are just embedded in the head. As well as in this opening, you can see Lileep's actual eyes, which are 2 basically yellow dots. In terms of what else is in the opening here, we can't tell. We don't know if it's if that's actually sort of a black thing, or whether it's just left to be black as in like it's dark in there, so all you can see is the eyes. Who knows? But we can assume that is, inside the casing almost is Lileep's actual head, where its brain and whatnot will be stored. So it's a bit of a different Pokemon. Who knows if there's actually anything in its base apart from maybe just a little bit of stuff. The main part of it might be in its head. Who knows? So, what do we learn about Lileep from Pokédex entries? Well, we learned that it lived 100 million years ago. That's a long time ago, and during this time it was actually living on the sea floor, and as we said at the start, it looks like a flower. That's what it did. It disguised itself as a flower to catch prey, like many creatures do nowadays. Maybe some of those will do, be actually to do with its origin and inspiration. We'll find out in a minute. Lileep remains permanently anchored to its rock, or its surface, I guess, during its life, and I guess it just lives there, just sits on the rock. Maybe that's what the legs are for, to keep it clamped down. And yeah, that's basically how Lileep lives her life. Sits on the ground, sits on the seafloor, and catches prey that swims by. We also, it's explained to us that Lileep was regenerated from a fossil. Who knew? But yeah, Lileep is a fossil Pokemon that lived 100 million years ago and caught prey using sort of camouflage as a tactic almost. So what's it based off of? I've sort of thrown the idea out that maybe it's based off of a creature in real life that does sort of the same thing, lives on the seafloor, catches prey like that, and basically that's what it is. Lileep is based on a crinoid. What is a crinoid? Well, they are marine animals that can live in water in depths up to 6,000 feet deep. That's a long way down. Basically, they just attach themselves to rocks or coral or maybe other plants. They are animals, but they look very much like plants themselves. But that's their camouflage. More specifically, Lileep is actually based on a sea lily, hence its name, the sea lily Pokemon. And the sea lilies are crinoids that spend adult life attached to the sea bottom. As I mentioned, some of them maybe live on plants, maybe some of them actually move around. Crinoids spend their adult life, i.e. they grow up and move around maybe to sort of grow up. But once they're fully grown, they anchor themselves to the seafloor and they live there. Basically, who knew? And you can see this picture here. It looks a lot like Lileep, doesn't it? It's got some tentacles almost that come out of its head, in quotation marks. But yeah, Lileep may also draw some information from sea stars, or more commonly known as starfish, mainly due to its base, as you can see there. If you took away its head, took away the top of its base, there's basically a starfish there, isn't it? So that sort of might have had some starfish in it as well, if you guys get where I'm going with that. So, Lileep, what is its name? Where does the name come from? Well, the Japanese name, Lilia, I can't speak Japanese, so please bear with, is a combination of, the actual spelling of it is Lily and Lila, which is Spanish for lilac, which relates to Lileep's colour. If I throw some lilac up there, it looks very similar to Lileep's sort of body colour as well, so maybe that's where that came from there. The English name, it is English, but I'm not. English name, Lileep, is a combination of, again, Lily, and then either peep, as in to peep out of its opening of its little eyes, or deep, as in it lives deep in the ocean. Lileep, the word Lileep, may also be inspired by or come from the Lileep Atoll. Basically, Lileep Atoll is a coral reef that is an island, basically, but it's got this big pool of water in the centre and it's full of coral, basically. I'm not going to explain it too much, but yeah, look at the word Lileep. Lileep. If you take out the L, take out the K and put an L, and then put an E with the other I, boom, Lileep. So it may have come from there. Who knows though? It is related, I guess. Coral, sea lilies. It makes a lot of sense. But I'll leave it up to you guys to decide whether it is coming into fruition or not. Finally, looking at Lileep alongside the models in terms of height, you can see it's actually pretty big. I mean, you might assume it'd be smaller, be a nice little flower. No. Assuming the 1 meter goes to the top of its head on this model, the 1 meter might be when it's like its head is raised up, in which case it'd be a bit smaller than this, but we don't know. Either way, I don't want to be caught by that grasp there. Not for me, guys. Not for me. But that is it for Lileep. So let's move on to its evolution, Cradily. Number 346 in the National Pokédex, coming right after Lileep, is Cradily. So its Japanese name is Uredo. That's how it's spelt, but it's actually said something more like Uredo, something like that. Again, the L is pronounced more like an R, so Uredo, something like that. Again, I can't speak Japanese. Cradily is the barnacle Pokemon, which is a bit weird because obviously we know what barnacles are. They clamp themselves to the rock, boom, that's a barnacle. But Cradily doesn't quite look the same. We'll look more at this later on. Again, it's rock grass type. It stands at 1.5 meters or 4 foot 11 inches, so we can assume this is possibly the height from base to the top of its head if its neck is straight. But again, we can't tell. Maybe it's its height when it's resting its head, basically. When creatures just are resting or just standing straight, obviously their neck generally goes into sort of a comfortable position. Hence, like what we see in the models, if I show you them here, it might be like this, you know, where it's just heads just resting and bobbing up and down. It might be that height, we don't know though. Cradily also weighs 60.4 kilograms or 133.2 pounds, so it's pretty heavy as well. A pretty big barnacle, I'll tell you that. So as I mentioned, here are the models, or there are the models, you've seen the models. In its shiny form, it turns from green. Obviously Lileep was a purple colour and turned green in its shiny form. Cradily is already green, and then it turns into a shiny, it gets red basically. So it's a bit of a weird, there's no correlation between the two shinies. It turns red, already pinky purple almost, and its tentacles go from pink to orange. So, you know, less of a red colour this time, more of just a light orange with a darker orange for the tips. Actually last time they went orange as well. Don't ignore me. Ignore me, guys. As I mentioned, when Lileep hits level 40, it will try and evolve into a Cradily, and it can evolve at any point after that. So, Cradily, it's very similar to Lileep in its body style, and the fact that we have the base, the neck, and then the head, or the neck or the stem almost. Last time it was definitely a stem because Lileep's head just seems to sort of rest on the end of it. Now we seem to have more of a neck on a Cradily, so it's a bit different, but it's very similar, you know, fairly similar at least. As we mentioned already, it's mainly a light green colour, again with some yellow markings. Some of these are on its body, on its base. You see again 2 rings just on sort of I guess its chest area, if it has a chest, but yeah, that's where they are. It also has some markings on its neck as well, very similar to the stem, just what the stem looked like on Lileep. Just 3 rings of yellow again, and again we have the 2 eye-like markings on its head. However, they're not on the bottom of the head now, they're on sort of towards the top, so they're actually in a better place to be actual eyes. Again, they're not actual eyes though. The tentacles now protrude from around the neck rather than sort of out at the top of the head, so we can assume when Lileep evolves, its head casing moves around slightly, so its tentacles have to come out through the bottom. I guess that would probably be worse, to be honest, because obviously when it's on the top you can just clamp them together. If you clamp these tentacles together now around Cradily, they're just going to get around its head. So I don't know, maybe they could be used to protect itself. I don't know, it's an idea. The black slit, the opening we had, it was on top of its head now. As I mentioned, that's moved, and it's now like a slit across the top, across the front of its face. It sort of goes around, and you can see these yellow eyes in the inside, sort of just in there, I guess, either side of its head almost. And you can imagine there'd be slightly actual eyes, I guess, since they're either side of the head rather than just like in the middle. And I guess it makes more sense to have the head more covered rather than this big opening on top of the head, which is it's pretty unsafe. It's like taking the top of your skull off and having your brain sticking out. I don't think that would be very safe to go around walking like that. I don't know, go ahead if you want to try it, guys, but I'm not going to. So, the Pokédex entries, what do they tell us about Cradily? Well, as opposed to Lileep sort of just clamping itself and living on the seafloor its whole life, when it evolves, it can actually roam around in search of food. Again, we have these little legs on Cradily's base. They're a bit bigger now compared to the base, so they might be able to sort of just move Cradily along the seafloor slowly. But again, we can assume most of Cradily's life is spent, much like Lileep's was, on the seafloor, using the tentacles and looking like a flower to catch prey. Apparently it can extend its neck however much it wanted or wants, and uses the tentacles to catch prey. So maybe the tentacles can extend out further than we can see in its art and its models. As well as this, Cradily can also secrete a digestive fluid from these tentacles. It's possible that Lileep could do the same, but we don't know. But Cradily certainly can. I guess this digestive fluid sort of weakens the opponent, weakens the prey, and sort of subdues them, so to allow for easy eating, almost. But Cradily also makes its nest in shallow waters rather than deep waters. And it can also be seen on beaches at low tide. So, just get out to the beach, have a nice sunbathe, just low tide comes and Cradily just walking about with their tentacles squirting out fluid. Lovely. But yeah, that's it for Cradily's Pokédex entries. So, where does it come from? What was it based on? Well, like Lileep, it's based on a crinoid or a sea lily. Sort of one and the same. But it may also have some inspiration from the sea anatomy in this case. Maybe, the fact that it now doesn't look more like one, but the fluid may suggest it. You guys get the idea there. Lileep might have some sea anemone in it as well, but you know, Cradily now looks a bit more like it almost, and that's a bit more menacing. Also, it does bear a strong resemblance to the predatory tunicate. What is that, you ask? Well, it's a creature, it exists, we just haven't seen much of it yet, because you know, similar to Cradily, they live on the seafloor and they catch prey that walks by, but they're known to live in the Monterey Canyon at depths of 200 to 1,000 meters deep. That's very deep. That's very deep indeed, and that's a lot of feet as well. So that's why we haven't got a proper picture of it here. You can just see like an artist's impression almost. But looking at that, looking at Cradily, especially the head, that looks very similar, except obviously in the predatory tunicate's case, it's most likely a mouth rather than an opening. I mean, Cradily could be a mouth as well, we just don't know. But they look very similar, so I'm certain there is at least some sort of basis to do with these two, or you know, Cradily and the predatory tunicate. Who knows? So, finally, let's look at the name for Cradily. We have the Japanese name first, which is Yureiru, which is a combination of Yuri, meaning lily, and cradle. This would be to cradle its eyes, possibly inside of its head. Who knows though? Cradle is a bit of a weird one. Maybe how it also catches its prey in the tentacles and cradles them like that. Not like cradling a baby, because you wouldn't want to strangle your baby. You guys get the idea. Cradily comes from a combination of cradle again and lily, so it's nothing really too amazing there. As to why it's called the barnacle Pokemon, your guess is as good as mine, guys. Your guess is as good as mine. But one more thing before we end. Obviously, let's look at how big Cradily is. Assuming that the height is to do with sort of its resting height, as we mentioned earlier, it's just a bit smaller than Ash. Obviously, his tentacles do get a bit bigger than, do go higher than him, but the actual body is just a bit smaller than Ash, and obviously a fair bit smaller than me. But it's a pretty bulky Pokemon. You wouldn't want to be swimming by and have this thing shoot its tentacles out and grab you. I don't think you want that, guys. I wouldn't want that, but I mean, maybe that's what you're into, but I don't know, it's not, whatever. But yeah, so it's pretty big. It's not a tiny Pokemon like Lileep was, but it's pretty big. So yeah. But guys, that's going to be it for this episode of Pokemon Origins. If you enjoyed it, be sure to let me know down below by hitting the like button, and also drop a comment suggesting what else I should cover in the future. What Sinnoh Pokemon do you want to see any of the starters? And then, do you want to see, I don't know, like, Lopunny and Baneri? Do you want to see, this is when my Sinnoh knowledge comes in handy. Do you want to see Glameow and Purugly for some cats? I don't know, guys. Let me know down below what you want to see, and I guess I'll pick out what I like. But for now, that's going to be it for me for today. I hope you enjoyed watching. I'll be seeing you next time. Goodbye, my friends.